Hello and welcome everyone. I am Dr. Asavri Sawant, Senior Sub-Editor at Elets Technomedia, India's leading and largest B2B multimedia platform. And in behalf of Elets Technomedia and the Banking and Finance Post magazine, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you for the launch of a very exciting new series that we have, the Elets Fintech Dialogues, which is in collaboration with the Department of Electronics, IT, Biotechnology and Science of Technology, Government of Karnataka. This exclusive series is an integral part of the World Fintech Summit, which is a 2-day premier event by Elets Technomedia that brings together global fintech and BFSI community from policymakers and industry leaders to innovators and key stakeholders. The summit fosters meaningful collaborations aimed at driving innovation and growth in financial services worldwide. We are honored to have the Department of Electronics, IT, Biotechnology, and Science and Technology, Government of Karnataka as our host state partner, alongside Karnataka Digital Economy Mission as our strategic partner for the World Fintech Summit. The Banking and Finance Post is Asia's premier B2B magazine dedicated to the BFSI sector and has been shaping industry narratives for over a decade. As a trusted knowledge partner, we continue to spotlight trends, insights, and innovations that define the future of banking, insurance, and financial services. This series, the Elets Fintech Dialogues, celebrates trailblazing leaders and innovators whose fintech driven initiatives are transforming lives and industries. And today we are privileged to host another inspiring entrepreneur who has been instrumental in revolutionizing the BFSI industry in India. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome Mr. Sandeep Sethi, VP and Regional Head of India and South Asia at Wibmo. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. It is a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure for our side as well. Thank you.
For our audience, Mr. Sandeep Sethi is the Vice President and Regional Head of India and South Asia at Wibmo, PayU, Naspers fintech company. In his role, he leads the region's payment business, driving revenue growth, strategic partnerships, and customer centric solutions in the evolving digital payments landscape. With over 27 years of experience in enterprise sales management, Sandeep has worked with Fortune 500 companies like IBM, NCR, Xerox, and Canon across banking, payments, and retail automation. He has a proven track record of managing large revenue streams, key account leadership, and business expansion across diverse sectors and geographies. At Wibmo, he focuses on enhancing payment security, fraud prevention, and seamless digital transaction experiences for businesses and consumers. His deep industry knowledge and leadership plays a crucial role in strengthening the company's presence in the India and South Asia regions. So thank you once again for joining us on this special series of Elets Fintech Dialogues. It is truly an honor to have you with us. Let us start with our conversation. So, as the theme of this discussion is from card skimming to APP frauds and changing the face of payment scams, how have payment fraud tactics evolved over the years from traditional threats like card skimming to modern risks like APP frauds? Because I'm not sure about your location, but in NCR over here, we get those kind of scams every day. Almost every day something new is coming up. And what key trends do you see that are shaping the future of payment security industry and this sector? Over to you.
Thanks for that introduction. Yeah, I mean the payment fraud has been evolving, throughout. The fraudsters are, we always say, they're always ahead, of the industry, and they always find a new way of, coming out with newer frauds. Let's go back maybe to the 2000s when the ATMs came into the banking industry. There was, as you rightly said, the card skimming was very, very popular that time. We had a lot of other kind of frauds going on, and the pin pad security. People are picking up ATMs. A lot of physical frauds were going on at that time. I think from there, banks started putting in a lot of measures to stop those physical frauds. And then, as it always happens, the fraudsters started looking at logical fraud. So, man in the middle attacks, software-led attacks, network-led attacks, very sophisticated, came in that industry. Now, over the last 10 years, when as UPIs come in and digital payments is sort of taken off, and internet payments, as we call it, is taken off, especially in India, all across. Uh, the fraudsters have evolved again, right? I mean, today we have frauds ranging from app frauds, internet frauds, identity, theft, account takeovers. Very clearly, the fraudsters are way ahead of the way frauds are going. The industry continues to invest a lot into preventing these frauds, all both from a systems and software side. However, we see that the frauds will continue to increase because the disposition of payments is increasing in the country multifold, which will always bring in newer measures, required to control frauds. Your question on the trends, clearly is showing two things. One, payment security, is now becoming more profile-led. It's becoming more behavior-led and pattern-led. It used to be very system-led earlier, very binary in terms of either we take a decision on, looking at one data stream or the other. But now we are looking at a multifold, multi um, parameters today to take decisioning on the payment side. So as we go forward, we will continue to see more decisioning on the entity and behavior side. The other piece is nobody can manage frauds as an entity individually anymore. While banks and other institutes put a lot of systems and processes to avoid frauds, and there is a huge guideline on it. However, as an industry, as an ecosystem, all stakeholders have to come together. And as we continue to see fraud come from various sides, the future is in a lot of coming together of the entire industry and start looking at fraud holistically, so that we can start looking at merchants, customers, and some of those entities, through a single vision, and start taking decisions on them.
Thank you so much for such detailed insight. We're very curious to know more from you on the same, which is, the fraudsters these days are tricking the victims into authorized payments and making everything look so much, legit, in simple words, that it is very difficult for consumers to identify between what is a real person from bank calling or a fraudster, and the entire systems that they show and the entire processes that they make you do. It's very much like how it would be at a real bank or a real app, etc. So how can consumers identify and protect themselves from such sophisticatedly crafted scams?
Yeah, I mean, this is a true problem today. Look, RBI, our regulator has been very, very prudent in terms of, looking at a lot of these frauds and, the trends which are going in. And they've been pushing all stakeholders, including banks, to create a lot of consumer awareness. So we do see a lot of mandate from the regulator today to go and continue to educate the customers. Now, the issue really which is coming up is largely on the fact that um there are two kinds of frauds. One is the user-assisted fraud, and the other one is the tech-led fraud. Now, I'll just possibly take a minute on those. User-led frauds are frauds where the consumer himself is giving access to a fraudulent person or an entity to take control of either his device or his system to authorize a transaction. Now, this may not be prevalent largely in the urban areas or with some segment of population, but across a wider segment of population, this is if you ask any banker today or any fraud practitioner, this is the biggest issue. In a lot of cases, you would have seen, people will say, okay, can you please fill in this OTP for me? Somebody will come and help them in, authenticating their transaction or putting their card data into the, during the checkout page itself. Now, those are all, user assisted frauds because you're actually giving access of your system to them. Similarly, then on the other side, we see a lot of tech-led frauds, which are easier to control, because what's happening there is, you can put tools on the systems, like on mobile. You can put tools on your browsers. You can put tools. As an industry, the bank can put a lot of controls and processes to stop a lot of these tech-led frauds itself. Those are still manageable right now, but again, consumers have a huge role to play there, because clickbaits, wrong links being clicked right now, falling for false offers, um, falling for wrong narration, in terms of we see digital arrests right now and so many of those kinds. These are largely led by consumer educating, and the industry educating the customer, that how not to fall for some of these tech-led initiations, which can be very easily solved, by having better passwords, by understanding, having biometric access enabled on your devices, ensuring that you follow the kind of guidelines which today the industry is pushing us to, and create more awareness, read more about what kind of frauds. So those tech-led frauds can definitely be strong, but I think the user-assisted frauds is where the biggest challenge for the industry as a whole is right now, and that is where I think we are a little far right now, because the population themselves today are assisting a lot of fraudsters to do the frauds right now. As you rightly said, they look very real. Usually, these fraudsters who do user assisted frauds are from the network of the consumer itself. They're a known person. They are not outsiders. They pretty much are in the circle itself. So yeah, I think that's where we possibly as an industry we're going to be spending more time. There are systems and tools which can now detect that the pattern is different. Maybe you can do a call to the customer just to see if he is not being assisted by somebody, or if he's possessing it. So biometric helps you with that. But again, a lot of those things can also be compromised if you're actually allowing the thief inside your own house.
So we have many more questions, stemming from this answer that we had from you. But first and foremost, we would want to know that with the advent of AI and ML and all these kind of technologies, in your observation, in your long experience in this field, have you seen AI supporting scams and frauds for the fraudsters, or AI being a very beneficial tool for the industry and the end users for fraud detection? What is your take on this?
It's a very, very interesting question. Uh, I think the pros of using AI, ML, and some of those systems actually outweigh the cons, where the fraudsters can also use some of these tools to create a sense of reality for the consumer, and uh, which actually induces an action from the customer. We are seeing a lot of that, but honestly, using the digital payment infrastructure we have right now, and the systems which are already there, using AI actually and ML really helps in many ways. I'll just give you an example. AI helps you with pattern recognition, anomaly detection, and real time analysis. Now, using AI in the right way, actually, and embedding them in fraud and risk systems, embedding streams of data coming from various devices and external data itself, can actually lead you to can help AI help you with coming out with decisioning much sharper and on real time basis itself within a tool, and that actually outweighs anything else which somebody can use AI for right now, because these decisionings can be the difference between you catching the fraud early or later. Similarly, on machine learning side, today all organizations today are including banks, they are on the predictive models. Models are ML models are a reality for us right now. The algorithms can create models based on historical transaction data. They can look at various data streams. History can give a lot of pattern analysis, and you can predict a lot of fraudulent transactions. These are already being used currently, but what's happening is they're being used disparately, so that will come to a little later. But again, it outweighs the the challenge which comes from AI itself. Again, machine learning can actually help in adapting. It also helps in scoring. So these scores which come from can automatically use these scores to take decisioning. Wherein a human may actually make error, the machine actually is much more precise. And these work simultaneously. They work on real-time basis. They can be embedded into your real-time systems and can really extrapolate the kind of savings we can do through the system itself. Again, another part of it is behavior analysis, as you asked. I mean, I'm a big believer that behavioral analysis, along with pattern analysis, is something which differentiates fraud and risk in current times. Now, just to give you an example, user profiling, which I was mentioning, really helps you to figure out if this customer today is behaving a little different than what he usually does. The device they're using right now, the browser they're coming from, is not the usual one. The location has changed. All this data can actually come in on a real-time basis. It also helps you to do continuous monitoring. Simple transaction analysis can help use behavioral data and analytics in a much better way to take decisioning as
well. Thank you so much for sharing that. We will dive deep further into this as well. I am a very curious person, so we have a lot of questions. One of the main aspects that the government is in general is doing for secure enhancing security, enhancing payment security and preventing frauds as a country is having these kind of reminder calls that we get on our mobile phones, etc., from the banks, from the government, etc., reminding us that what kind of scams that are going on and to be careful around that. We also have similar kind of alerts from the banks, apps, etc., as well, for making people more aware against the ongoing frauds and scams. It overall also adds to the fraud prevention methods that the companies are undertaking. But as we have behavior analysis and pattern analysis, a big aspect the way in healthcare. For example, we have remote monitoring devices, our smartwatches, smartphones, detecting your steps, your movements, your behaviors, your patterns around, exercising and lifestyle, and then capturing that data to give you timely alerts that if you fell down while on your jogging or hiking, you get an instant message on your smartwatch that you've had a hard fall, do you want to call emergency, and this and that. Do you see this being a future of the fintech industry as well, getting alerts on your mobile devices, on your banking devices in advance on the ongoing patterns and behaviors that you are probably showing in last 5 minutes, etc., being that timely and real time? Do you see that being one part of the future of fraud prevention strategy worldwide, or is it Asabri, you're just talking rubbish?
No, you are absolutely on the mark. In fact, it's not even the future, Sabri. It's right here, in our times right now. Now there are sophisticated systems and tools available on the FRM, fraud and risk management side, software tools, which of course enable banks, as I was just saying, to look at the behavioral data. Right now, behavioral data can come from multiple sides. It can come from your phone, right? It can come from your browser. It can come from your smart devices tomorrow. And it can come from your location, your GPS data, your IP location. So, today a lot of these parameters are being looked at, and are being embedded into the fraud and risk management tools to ensure that this rich data which comes in and can give a good analytics of, what's changing, what's changed now, what's changed in the last 5 minutes. This is not usual. This is a very different behavior to the usual which this customer does. Because see, we all have a pattern. You go to an ATM, you typically used to take out a particular amount every time. You would go, you would do a transaction, you would pretty much transfer the same amount, same bills, on a monthly basis. There will be some others, but on UPI side, there are many more. But typically, we would see those kind of, fixed patterns and behaviors. Anything which moves away from it, from any of the devices, any of the fields, can be looked at as an anomaly. And that anomaly can then actually be looked at and decisioning can be done better. So this is not just the future, this is actually right now happening. And this is possibly adoption of these technologies holistically into the embedded systems is possibly in need of the hour. In fact, our regulator is now also pushing, for the banks and the stakeholders to adopt a lot of these technologies as we speak right now. Multi-factor authentication using biometric is something which the regulator is pushing. Regulators saying that you should do real-time declines now. They're telling the banks. Regulators also pushing and saying that try to embed two or three technologies together. Look at behavioral data, look at pattern data, and try to look at some other external data, and then compile it together. Look at an entity level, a pattern and behavior, and then take decisions. So it's right here. It's happening right away, and with smart devices only increasing and more data flowing in from them, I think the next is the ring, which will possibly do a lot of authentication. There will be some new, maybe glasses are going to be next. So yeah, data coming in from all these Internet of Things enabled devices will help do a pattern and behavior analysis.
Definitely, data that is being generated from all these, behavior analysis, pattern analysis, devices, banks, etc., is very vital for all kinds of organizations and the country as well. It is equal to gold at this day and age. Um, and when we talk about data and when we talk about fraud, the one thing that comes to our minds is the recently launched DPDP Act that is in place. So, we would like to know your thoughts around the same and how are organizations working themselves to be more compliant towards this? And if you have any suggestions in which you might have, observed that the Data Protection Act can be better, more enhanced. So, we would like to know your thoughts on that as well.
I think the DPDP Act, or the draft guidelines, drafts, it's been in play for a long. I think the industry has come together at multiple times and has given a lot of inputs on that. Look, for a company which has been running authentication and payment systems for last 20 odd years, we are very cognizant of the PII data and the protection of it, and we've been compliant with most of the PCI DSS and EMV requirements. A lot of those have personal information being protected as a base requirement. So as a company, it's in our DNA to look at those compliances and build systems, keeping them in mind, and also ensuring that at no point of time, because see, today we work with most of the banks, most of the payment aggregators, not just in India, across the world, within multiple geographies as a global company. uh, it is we look at each country's guidelines around the data, and ensure that we are fully compliant to that. We understand this very deeply as well. As a parent group, PayU also is a payment aggregator. They're a regulated entity, and they have their own guidelines. A lot of their systems on fraud side and processing side are run by us. So there is a deep knowledge of the data privacy guidelines, and the requirements to ensure that the customer data is always uh, you know very clearly guardrailed. Also consent, a good part of DPDP is customer consent, and we have as an organization which is running tech, we are enabling a lot of customer consent on the authentication side, on the payment systems itself, and enabling our banks to go and start making those interventions for consent when they are seeking permissions to from the customer to adopt to a lot of these technologies. So fully cognizant, fully appreciative of the fact that the industry, the government, the regulator, everybody is taking the steps in the right direction. Europe was a little ahead in terms of the way they formulated their data PFC guidelines, and I think, but India is now doing a because the number of transactions we do in India right now totally outweigh anybody else from a digital transaction perspective, and there are so many stakeholders, and to have a common, it's not easy for anybody to formulate a regulation here, considering the number of ecosystem players. So I think the DPDP Act is it's a very brave move. It's a move in the right direction. I think it covers most of the sides of the consumer side, the tech side, all of them. It also looks at technology is an enabler, and how the enabler should also not be kept behind in the conversation. So I think it's a very comprehensive policy, and we're only looking forward to it, taking shape and getting better over a period of time, and we'll continue to be a participant in the conversation.
Thank you so much, sir. So, we would also want to know details into how Wibmo is addressing these evolving fraud risks, and if you can share some insights into the innovative security solutions that are being developed in the organization.
Well, look, you see, our DNA as a company, has been in payment security. Wibmo at 25 years is a 21-year-old organization. We started off, when we did as an authentication, company which essentially was enabling credit cards and debit card authentication. So today we are very proud to say that we are the largest, authentication system being used by most banks in India for credit and debit card. So uh, it's in our DNA to keep looking at the authentication, which is again a payment security solution. Uh, we then built, with our expertise and knowledge of the payment security systems, especially on the authentication side, we started looking at how we could use the rich data which is available, because there's a lot of consumer data in terms of the device they use, the IP they use, the location they have, the card numbers. A lot of that data is available, and of course, with the permission of the banks, for those specific banks itself, we have been able to then create a fraud and risk solution, which is called risk-based authentication on top of it, which starts looking at that data, runs rules over it, and depending on what score it then creates of a high risk transaction or a low risk or a medium risk, those systems can then take decisions to either approve those transactions or decline them, or send them for a challenge by somebody calling you up and checking with you. So a lot of those systems have been initially started by us. Over a period of time, we've looked at the capability of this solution and then extended it to a full-fledged fraud and risk management solution. We call it Trident. Today, Trident, is being used not just by banks on the issuer side, but we are also it's being used for fraud and risk on the wallets in India, on POS machines, on card not present transactions. It is pretty much a full enterprise fraud risk management solution, which can look at any channel, any payment system, and start looking at transactions there and start giving scores. It's a real time, and the need of the hour today is real time declines. So even the regulator today has pushed for a real time decline, because your ability to take a decision, look at all the parameters of behavioral data, different systems data, and the whole profile of an entity, and then decide if you want to approve it or not approve it on a real time basis is the most critical thing today. And we are enabling that. So we run a real time decisioning fraud and risk management solution. We also understand that banks, and they can't put teams and teams and teams of people to do analysis and write these rules and stuff. So it's a no code platform. They can pretty much do most things themselves, write rules themselves, look at data reports, do a lot of analysis of what's really working, what's not working, look at entity level data. So very deep analysis is possible. So we believe that we've come to a point. We've also got a data science team which can build models for these banks and these entities today, and help them use AI and ML capabilities within the system itself. It's also built for scale. The technology we use currently helps them use it. And for India, as I said, does large amount of transactions. So something like UPI is 70% of India's payment system. How do you look at frauds for UPI? So we built that module internally. So 70, 80% of India's transactions are UPI, and all of them can actually be clearly be scored through the system itself on the scale, on the number of transactions also which happens there. We've also, because we understand authentication, we've also built the multi-factor authentication solutions right now. So biometric authentication being used, at a merchant level or inside. Let's say you're a HDFC Bank user. So inside the HDFC Bank itself, you should be able to, use the app to approve a transaction by simple swipe. So we've got those solutions. We already live with one bank, and multiple banks are now going live with it. We also have the capability to use our authentication engine and also approve transactions within a merchant app. So let's say you're on Swiggy and you have already registered for a particular card. Once you've done a transaction, you now may not need to go out of Swiggy or Zomato or any of these applications, and you can just choose a particular order and just do a swipe and pay and do it within that. But at the back end, it's going back to the bank's systems. It's checking all the fraud, it's looking at the entity, it's doing all of that within 5 seconds and taking a decision right there. So that's another thing we are building up right now. We also work with various entities right now. The issuers, acquirers, the wallet people, the card issuers, the merchants, the bank schemes, the Mastercard, Visa, everybody else. So there is a lot of knowledge sharing between all of us, and having run systems not just from our authentication side, but we also run payment gateways for banks and big players today. Billions and billions of transactions pass through them. So we understand the whole payment cycle from authentication to authorization, and on every ecosystem player's stake in that is something which we work with. So we understand payments in a much wider scope, and we are able to build guardrails and security solutions for each one of them at different points. So payment security is in our DNA, as I said, and we continue to evolve and continue to invest in it. As a group, we are also very keen to see how we can partner with the stakeholders within the industry itself and enable some of these solutions to them as a consortium as well.
Well, you definitely should take part in the World Fintech Summit as well. We have a lot of stakeholders coming up. That was a very timely pitch. But okay, moving on. We have two more questions before we let you go. I know we are already at the time mark, but we would really want to know that maintaining seamless, customer experience along with security and safer digital payments. Balance is the key in everything. You can have a very secure payment method, but if it is very cumbersome for the end users, the customers, then nobody is going to use it. So, what are your suggestions on the industry leaders that are already, hearing, or budding entrepreneurs who are watching this, to maintain this kind of delicate balance between seamless customer experience as well as safer digital payment ecosystem? Your thoughts and suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, a great question, because we, customer experience is at the top of everything else, and because the customer loyalties are very, very low today, if one bad experience and we can move to the next, and it won't take much. But having said that, security is also at the prime, right? And because, we see that the fraud ratios are only increasing. Now, this balance is something which can be only built if, the systems are frictionless. So as we build technologies, as we build more tools, we have to ensure that these are frictionless, they are less friction, they create least friction to reach the end objective. And we've had learnings in those. We built systems using the best technology available at that time, and as a continuous improvement program, we keep seeing how can we keep reducing hops, how can we keep making it easier to reduce the number of steps it takes to finish that particular transaction from fraud side or from the authentication side itself. So when you're building something today, it's imperative to look at uh, the least path you can give from an experience perspective to reach the objective. However, security has to be embedded at each stage. So security needs to be embedded in the basic architecture. The security needs to be embedded in the way the system today connects with multiple other data streams, devices. It should be able to send a lot of data to core systems so that they can start leveraging this data and start building their own payment security solutions, and how you can then start using a lot of that data within your customer experience streams to give that embedded experience. I think those are the only way you can continuously improve and create that balance. It's a tough one, let me tell you that, because in payments today, security paramounts everything else. But because of the amount of transactions which go off and the competition around, customer experience is paramount as well. So yeah, it's a tough one. But my view is, if you're building something new, build it with the least friction, build it embedded with technologies which enable data flow in and out. Ensure that the regulator, there is a regulatory view of what you're building in. It's futuristic in the way it will possibly solve for the problems on the fraud side tomorrow.
Thank you so much. So our very last question of the series, the Elets Fintech Dialogues is a tradition that we do over here, is one piece of exclusive information that we would request you to share only for our audience that hasn't been revealed at any other platform yet. So this includes anything that maybe you're working on right now that you are comfortable on sharing, but hasn't been revealed before for our audience.
Well, well, while we're working on many things, to be honest with you, it's a continuous, as I said, continuous improvement is something which we're doing. A lot of the things which we are building right now are in testing. They are in. We can't share much of those, but I think one of the things we can definitely share today is that we are very close to, scaling up our fraud and risk management solution to get integrated, into not just the core payment systems now, but also the core systems of the bank itself. And that when that happens, bank can start looking at a universal truth. They can start looking at a customer profile or a merchant profile, across all the systems they run right now. Today, the systems are disparate. They have fraud and risk solutions for various different channels, which still are working in isolation. The horizontal layer is still missing, so they don't get a universal view of the customer, at a cust ID level, or maybe a merchant at a merchant ID level. But by integrating into more and more of their core systems, and creating a single truth, and then creating a profile with all systems giving their input, will possibly be the biggest solve, I think, the in the fraud and risk space today, which is required. And we know that our customers are looking for those solutions. If you ask any banker today, any fraud practitioner, this is the ultimate view, is that there should be a one universal truth. And of course, as I said earlier, once this is available, this kind of a capability is available within one bank, banks can then start sharing their data on frauds and risks and customer profile and merchant profile. And once that consortium sort of looks at that data at an industry level, I think the decisioning can become much faster. It can solve for a lot of perils right now. I know, today the government is doing a lot of work. They've founded I4C. There are a lot of initiatives being taken by them. They're pushing the industry to more audits, more compliances. But I think a consortium at that level, which can look at entities as a universal entity, with all the data being, put together, is something which will help a lot. And we are taking steps in those directions right now.
We are very excited to hear finally when you release that kind of those steps that you're working towards. So with that, we come down to the end of the very insightful discussion. Thank you so much, Mr. Sandeep Sethi, VP and Regional Head of India and South Asia at Wibmo, for joining us and imparting a wealth of knowledge and information with our audience today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. I think these are very interesting conversation, very interesting topics you brought out. I hope the listeners find it good. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank our audience for staying with us till the very end. If you have any questions for Mr. Sandeep Sethi or for Wibmo, please feel free to leave those down in the comments box. We will be able to get you answers through him. Also, if you have any specific people that you would like to have on this series, also mention those down below. We would love to have conversations with them next. With that, stay informed with us on the latest financial technologies. Stay happy. Bye bye.